This is Becoming UnDone.
So maybe I should start right here. Yeah, I missed a week. Now 2. No new episodes dropped, and I hate excuses. But my wife and I are in the middle of a move. Unpacking boxes, figuring out where my toothbrush goes. You know the drill. Matter of fact, it's not an exaggeration to say that since I last spoke with you in these hallowed halls, I nearly died. I am stubborn, and I am cheap. For moving, that means I expect myself to do it all, and I won't splurge to pay for help. Last weekend, I was moving a truckload of junk from Lubbock to Waco, and in the process, I was trying to load my squat rack out of the back of that truck and into the house. Now, we're staying in a rent house right now, and thankfully it has an in-ground pool. First time I've ever had one. Pretty cool. And I was really looking forward to trying it out. But before then, there's work to be done. So I've got this 8-foot-tall, all-steel welded squat rack, and I'm rolling it up to the sidewalk so that I can pull it up and get it in the house. One wheel hits the curb a little bit before the other, and before I know it, I've induced a tumbling roll in this rack. And it's probably 250, 300 pounds, and I'm inside of it. So in that moment, I've got a choice. I can either stick with it and let it break my back, I can let it slam me into the concrete, or, plan C, the pool's nearby. I can dive in the pool, crisis averted. So I bail. I hit the pool. The rack goes clanging down onto the concrete, and my phone's in my pocket. Now I'll say this phone is cursed. I had it for 18 hours before I cracked the screen, and now, less than a month after I got it, it takes a dip in the pool. I try to spring out of the pool as fast as I can so that I don't get it wet any longer than I have to, and my shorts come off as I hit the pool deck. It is a comedy of errors, but a near miss. So before I go any further, my apologies. My apologies. I promise. I'll do better next week. Now then, the show. People ask me from time to time, what was the highlight of your career as an athletic trainer? Any moment that really sticks out? First time I got the question, I didn't even hesitate. I knew right away. There was no doubt in my mind about it. Stanford Stadium, Brent Brennan. He was recovering from a hamstring injury, then a back. There was rehab, there was Tucson heat, months of work, the comeback, the touchdown, and the thank you from him. Right there in his moment of triumph. And every time I've been asked since, I've told the same story. Because in my opinion, nothing else has come close. Brad's a past guest on this show, way back in episode 87, and he told his story of grit and toughness, how he went from a lightly recruited California State basketball champ to one of the first Americans to ever play professional football in Japan. And if you listen to that episode, you've heard a version of this story before. But I'm going to tell it again, because it's not just a career highlight. It's one of the highlights of my life. This time, though, I'll try to add some extra flavor and keep it true to the spirit of our Dick Tomey docuseries. Brent Brennan was an undersized, walk-on wide receiver. He had great hands and a ferocious heart. He'd managed to snag a last-minute invite to join the team, and he made the most of it, eventually becoming one of the most steady and dependable targets in a stacked University of Arizona receiving corps that featured names like future NFLers Jeremy McDaniel and Dennis Northcutt. When I first met Brad in 2000, he was this friendly, free-spirited guy with board shorts, sunglasses, and a rare mix of confidence and humility. And I've since learned that's just the Brennan way. Every Brennan I've ever met has that same light in them. At the time when we first crossed paths, Brad had been battling a recurrent hamstring strain for nearly a year. Shortly thereafter came a back injury, and things got worse. When I came on board and jumped full-time from gymnastics to football, he was already going on a full season of rehab. We'd work together pretty much every day, sometimes twice a day, for months at a time, all summer long. Without a doubt, I know I saw him more than my own wife that summer of 2000. And in a pre-indoor facility era, we regularly went up to the scorching Arizona football practice fields in 110-degree weather where he'd run routes, do drills, and he'd work hard and get better every day. But it didn't stop there. Brad did pool workouts, lifting, sprint work, even drills in the foam gymnastics pit in an effort to get healthy. And he did, but it was slow. Somewhere along the way, Brad's older brother Brent joined the staff as an offensive graduate assistant. First time I met Brent, it was like a little taller, more seasoned version of the same Brennan I already knew. Same signature grin, same cap on backwards with the California swag, same love for life. But unlike Brad, Brent wasn't a receiver. Not anymore, anyhow. He had been, though, as a student athlete at UCLA. At the time, he was now into coaching, and as an offensive GA, he was putting in countless hours along with former guest David Phipp on the defensive side of the ball. All that to say that while Brent was learning the offense, he was also aware of what his kid brother was going through in rehab. Brad missed that opening game of the 2000 season, a September 2nd matchup at Utah. It had been a date we'd both circled on the calendar way back in the spring. But he wasn't quite ready yet. As a coach and as his brother, Brent was in a tough spot too. He knew Brad wanted to go, but he also knew he wasn't quite himself yet. It's hard to be a coach and a big brother at the same time. So we all talked it over and agreed. Take it slow, regroup, aim instead for the conference opener. He continued restricted in practice, doing twice-a-day rehab, sat out 2 home games, a loss to Ohio State and a win against San Diego State. But come the Pac-10 opener on the road in his hometown Bay Area against Stanford, he finally got the green light. September 30th, Stanford Stadium. I didn't start. Losi Leonard and Brandon Marshall got that honor. I thought he was ready. Brent thought so too. And Brad told me that he agreed. 31,165 fans in the stands. Probably a good chunk of them extended Brennan family. The Wildcats clung to a 3-0 lead midway through the first quarter. Then, finally, Brad got the call, entered the game for his first game action in over a year. Arizona QB Ortiz Jenkins took the snap, dropped back, and hit number 13 in stride as he leapt over a defender and took it to the house. In my memory, I distinctly remember that it was at least an 80-plus yard touchdown, and I've told the story that way for years that it was. Maybe it's a Mandela effect or something because I finally looked it up, and according to the box score, officially, it was a 36-yard pass. If I'm remembering it correctly, Brother Brent was actually in the booth on the headset, so I don't think he was on the sidelines to see. At any rate, on the season, Brad had one play under his belt, and it happened to be a one-play, 8-second scoring drive to put U of A up. But to Brad, that catch was way more than just a completion. It was an exclamation point. Notice, a roadside historical marker that told him and the world that despite all the setbacks, the adversities, the disappointments, the mental, the physical pain and suffering he'd endured, he was back. But Brad didn't come to the sideline and say he was back. Oh, he was jacked. He was ecstatic. He was yelling that we were back. Ball still in hand, he came straight at me, hit me with a full body, full speed hug, the kind that knocks you off your feet, the kind we've talked about in this show that Coach Tomey was made famous for, the kind that says, you were with me in this. It's been decades since that game, and I've had more incredible memories than I can count. But that one, it's still right there near the top. Over the past several episodes, we've heard from people whose lives were changed by Dick Tomey. The truth is, some of them didn't need to learn how to lead with love. They already had it in them. The Brennan family was like that. It wasn't that Brad and Brent learned compassion in the first place from Coach Tomey, but instead it was that they recognized it in him. Their dad, Steve, had played football at San Jose State. Their mom, Courtney, was a cheerleader there. That foundation was already there long before, poured in them at home. But when you carry the kind of light that Dick Tomey did, others are drawn into its orbit, whether they lacked it or they just wanted more. Coach Tomey was like a gravitational force, and the Brennans got pulled in, just like the rest of us. Today, Brent's the head football coach at the University of Arizona, that very same program where he once poured hours into film stuffed into a storage closet with David Phipp, and on the practice fields running drills as a young GA. The same program where his brother caught that comeback touchdown. And today, we get to talk about it, what he learned, what he carries forward, and how the lessons of Coach Dick Tomey still guide his steps. Sadly, we lost Coach Tomey to cancer in 2019. But lately, I've found myself thinking about him more and more. And as I've grown in my own leadership, I've kept asking myself, how can I lead like he did? How can I love people like he did? What was his secret sauce? What made people follow him so fiercely, even though he was tough and fiery? And they carried his lessons for decades after they had taken off the pads or shut the office door for the last time. Because in a profession where wins and losses often scream the loudest, Dick Tomey was different. He built something far more lasting than wins and losses. He built relationships. And those questions, they have not let me go. So I started asking, I started listening, I started chasing down the people who knew him best. Players, staff, family. To unpack what made him special. To trace his path, to learn what made his leadership so timeless. If you've been here with me, we've followed his journey from Indiana to Hawaii, from Hawaii to Tucson, from Tucson to San Jose, and even in his retirement, he never really stopped coaching, mentoring, or loving people. This journey has helped me rediscover a legend, and maybe, hopefully, prayerfully, become a better leader myself. While Brent Brennan was just starting out, he had no idea that the man he was working for would shape the entire trajectory of his coaching life. That's what Coach Tomey did. He built people. And Brent Brennan is living proof. Today we continue our deep dive into the life, the legacy, and the lessons of Coach Dick Tomey with a conversation that comes full circle. Brent Brennan is no longer a young assistant trying to earn his stripes. He is the man at the helm in Tucson. And in his own words, he's trying to honor Coach Tomey's legacy. Not by recreating the past, but by carrying its values into the future. You're tuned in to Becoming UnDone. And this, my friend, is part 9 of the life, lessons, and legacy of Coach Dick Tomey, a Toby Brooks passion project. Super excited today. Long time coming. I've been looking for an excuse to talk with my buddy Brent Brennan for quite a while. Had your brother on the show, and that was a good time. But this seemed like a great excuse to reconnect with you. So, head coach of the Arizona Wildcats, former head coach of San Jose State Spartans, and our paths crossed when we were both GAs at U of A in Tucson. So, Brent, welcome to the show.
Toby, what's up? It's great to see you, man. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. When I really thought about this idea, you were one of the first names that came to mind because your path intersected with Coach Tomey multiple times and at multiple levels throughout your career. And to see, honestly, I was thinking about this before you even got to U of A. So to see you and the staff that you've reassembled there is really, really exciting. So we'll get into that. But I want to start at the beginning. You were a GA at 3 different schools, which is not how that typically goes. Usually those are 2-year gigs, but you got different things at each place, and you could have been done probably, but you chose to pull up stakes and move to Tucson and be with U of A for that 2000 season. So I guess talk me through when you first met Coach Tomey and what made that interaction so important that you decided you wanted to really initiate your college career there.
Well, I had always had an incredible respect for Coach Tomey, just his teams. You know, we played against those teams when I was at UCLA, and just his teams were always so tough and played so hard and just super impressive. And then my brother ended up coming down here to play, and so then I got to meet Coach Tomey face-to-face a handful of times. And then when I first got out of school, I was coaching high school football for a couple of years, and Coach Tomey was recruiting a player that I was coaching, and then you know, the friendship kind of started from there, or the relationship kind of started from there. And then as my GA went, I had another year. I was in just finished our first year at University of Washington with Coach Neuheisel. And I was at the convention, and Coach Tomey grabbed me and he said, "Hey, why don't you come coach with us and be a part of Brad's last year and get to know some new coaches?" And that was right away. He's like, "This business is about who you know and what relationships you have, and so this will introduce you to a whole new staff, and so it kind of went from there."
Yeah, such an exciting story, and I mean, I joined Arizona in 98, and that was a magical season, and you were there. I mean, I still have got pictures of Brent Brennan jumping on a goalpost around somewhere. But that 98 season, 12-1, best record in school history, number 4 overall in the polls. And that was followed up with a season we would all describe as a disappointment in 99, where the expectations coming into 99 were really high. That Penn State game we never really recovered from. So in 2000, it's kind of a mixed bag. Wasn't really sure what to expect. And you're on board. You're part of a coaching staff that had encountered some change. Coach Phipp comes in with you. Our paths first crossed there. What do you remember most about that transition to Tucson, and especially early on integrating with the staff that he had there?
Well, I think one of the best things about Coach Tomey and the people that he chose to surround himself with, it was just always such a welcoming group, right? The team had a really healthy vibe to it. The coaching staff, there seemed to be, and I'm even able to see that kind of on the backside of that now. Just I think the University of Arizona football, there's some magic to this place, and Coach Tomey just really leaned into that. And so you had just great coaches who also ended up being great mentors and friends in my life, even though I was just with them for about 8 months that first year. But it's so much of my career and like all the things that I've been lucky to have happen for me were a byproduct of the choice to come to University of Arizona in 1999.
Yeah. I know as a young coach, I mean, you're in learning mode, and you think about what graduate assistants had to do even back then, the cut-ups and just the long hours and just the grind that it took to be a coaching GA. What did you see in Coach Tomey and in that staff that inspired you? I mean, you're a P5, P4 head coach today. What did that experience teach you and open your eyes to that made you think that this is what I really want to do?
Well, I think, I was really pulled to how Coach Tomey, and then because of him, the staff treated the players, the relationships coaches have with the players were so healthy. That part of it was like such a positive. I think like so many people in college football try to say like this is a family, but I think that's really hard for that to happen. But Coach Tomey had a magical way of bringing it together like that, and for people like truly, really feeling that. And so I think that was just the thing I leaned into the most with it. And then there's a lot of great coaches on that staff, right? There was multiple guys that have been head coaches, and even from that staff that, that's how I got to know Rich Ellerson. That like led to my next job. So, and to this day, I still talk to Dave Phipp probably every other week. And, we haven't worked together for a long time now, but we're still close as ever. And that all started because, we shared, our office was in the storage closet. The football offices in McHale. I mean, back then you only had 2 GAs, one on each side of the ball. There was no analysts. There was no quality control, and there was only 2 of you. So Phipp and I would sit back there, and, he got me listening to country music, and it was a hell of a deal. Yeah.
I will never forget. I mean, that season didn't really go as any of us would have hoped. And there were a lot of just near misses and just things that we never would have hoped for. Phipp had left a full-time coaching job to be a GA, and you had left kind of midstream. And I'll never forget the 2 of you being in the training room, and, the media had started to bubble, and firecoachtomey.com had sprung up. I mean, it was a tough time. And I remember Phipp saying, someday this is all going to come together. Someday we're going to get a chance to do it our way. And I'm not even going to lie. Like, I welled up when I heard that you were named as the next head coach of the University of Arizona, because I remember that conversation in that instant. And I thought, freaking Dave Phipp is a prophet. Like he knew what was going to happen. Maybe not the details, but it did. And so things I've seen along the way, definitely cheering for you at San Jose and watching the players first mentality that I've seen you cultivate. And even when you were a GA, just the positive, the coach 'em up mentality. Coach was beloved by his players. He was tough. He wasn't going to be easy on you, but he was beloved by many players, including Brad. What do you think made Coach Tomey so impactful in their lives beyond the football field?
Because I think they all knew he cared about them, like outside of football. I think, football, this game on this level can be so much about touches or targets or tackles or the NFL. And, Coach Tomey believed that the football would take care of itself, but our real job as coaches was to mentor and guide and develop young men off the field as leaders, as husbands, as fathers.
This is something that's really been weighing on me heavily with each new episode of the show and every new guest that I get to hear from. In my mind, great coaching should be timeless. It transcends generations. And of course, a recognized leader and molder of men like Dick Tomey would be successful in today's game, right? After all, that family first, the team approach to college football, it's as important now as it ever was. Right? Right? Sadly, I don't think so. And it isn't because it's antiquated or old-fashioned or out of style or any less important than it's ever been. It's because the game has changed. The old rules requiring athletes who transfer to lose a season of eligibility and have to sit out a year were detriments to rampant roster shifts. And the hard line for amateurism and no pay for play meant that rosters, at least on paper, were made up of equals. No prima donnas, no multi-million-dollar quarterbacks threatening to sit it out if they don't get their bag. Prior to the advent of the transfer portal in 2018, approximately 4% of NCAA FBS football players transferred every season. In 22-23, 2,707 FBS players transferred. On a 100-man roster, that number jumped from about 4 guys to nearly 30 on every team. For 24-25, that number has swollen even more to 3,718 D1 football players declaring for the portal. And basketball is maybe even crazier. My own Baylor Bears have literally lost every single player from this past season's roster to graduation, to the NBA, or more commonly, to the transfer portal. Every single player, not one person coming back from last year. And I believe this is why we've seen coaching greats call it a career. The era of being able to invest in a young person and grow them for years is gone. Now, I'm not placing blame, but I am completely convinced that a coach like Dick Tomey simply would not participate in a system where a fourth or a third of his team just up and left to seek out greener pastures every season. I don't think he could handle it. It's tragic, really. This show and this idea of struggling through adversity and finding success through pain is an idea that today's high-level athlete doesn't really have to confront. Again, I'm not blaming them. If you're unhappy with your place on the depth chart, you can go somewhere else. Chances are make more money doing it. Who among us wouldn't? If you don't like how a coach or sports staff person talk to you, you can transfer. It's a complicated reality, and it's one Brent's generation of coaches has been forced to reconcile and wrestle with that his predecessors did not. While the Nick Sabans and the Mike Krzyzewskis are pretty much done and they can walk away, younger coaches like Brent don't have that luxury. They have to find a way to stay true to that training and that tutelage that they received from those family first type coaches who worked in a bygone era, to find a way to make it work with a modern system where pretty much everyone is figuring it out on the fly, day by day, for the first time. It can be a tough thing to do. But I'll say this, Brent does it well. Even if he's faced criticism from media types and fans in the process, honoring and respecting his players and their families.
And so he leans so heavy into that, and that just left such a strong imprint on all of us. And I think it doesn't matter who you're like, any Tomey guy you talk to. Shoot, we had Lance Briggs and Paul Shields in here last week to speak to our team. Just like how much they all talked about just how special he was in their life. And I think you didn't have to talk to Coach Tomey for very long to know that he was actually listening. Like it was like, that was like one of his real superpowers, is that he wasn't distracted when you were talking. He was locked in. He was really intentional and sincere in listening to and hearing what you had to say.
Yeah. And I've heard and through this project really dug deep and seen video footage of him speaking to your players at San Jose and some other speaking that he's done. And I think he didn't like this social media, the cell phone, this distraction generation, because you're right. Like he would look through your soul with those eyes and grab you by the back of the neck and pull you in. And I can remember even just seeing that when he would have that conversation with a player. It's not happening to me. And I'm like, holy cow, this guy's intense. And he is loving these players as hard as he knows how to love them. And I was just so taken with the fact that that could happen in big-time college football. I just didn't expect it.
Yeah, no, I think his way was different, and I think the world has gone more that way now, but I think it's because we feel like it's the right way. And, the Coach Tomey's magic was, like you said, that looking into your soul and being able to find a way to connect and push you to levels that you didn't think you could get to. He even did that for me as a coach. I mean, there were so many times where he would, when I was an assistant, where he would cuss me out. Shoot, he did it when I was a head coach. I mean, he let me have it after a game. My first year at Hawaii, he was at the game and he let me have it. But you always knew it came from a good place, and you always knew that he wanted what was best for you. And I think he did a great job. And for him, he was also good at connecting with all the players on the team. It wasn't just the superstars, it was every player on the team felt they had a connection to him.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, your story is particularly interesting because you were there for the last game at Arizona, and then that staff kind of goes their separate way. A big chunk of you go to Cal Poly with Coach Ellerson, like you mentioned. You went some other places, but then circle back, and you become a part of his staff at San Jose, and you're there for that 2010 season when he coaches in his last game as a head coach. What did you learn about Coach Tomey during that part of your career that you didn't maybe already know about him? And how do you think it impacted you as a future head coach yourself?
Well, he always had just such class and grace to him. And whether it was going really good or not good, like he didn't change. Like he didn't, change up who he was based on the outcome of the football game. And that was something, at that time there was just some extreme challenges at San Jose State. I mean, unlike maybe anyone else in America had to endure. And he was just, kind of weathering the storm, trying to help them get through it. And really, there's like, now having been back at San Jose, there's lots of people at San Jose that credit Dick Tomey with saving football at San Jose State. I mean, it was really on the brink of not being a part of their existence anymore as an institution. So everybody gives Coach Tomey a ton of credit for that. But that was his magic, man. And he, it was cool. I remember coming down here for his funeral when we all came down here spring of 19. I mean, there's a ton of players from San Jose State here, like guys that drove here from LA or flew in. I mean, it's just, there were players that have been coached all over the country that showed up for that service here. It's really, really special.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Hawaii, and you have a unique connection to Hawaii that continues even to this day.
To this day!
Your cousin, legendary quarterback at Hawaii, Coach Tomey's career began there. And now there's definitely that Hawaiian connection persists to this day on your roster. And I remember seeing you wear the lei in Big 12 media days, and it was still part of your wardrobe. To an outsider, this coach from California, who's in Tucson, Arizona, is kind of an odd pick to be wearing a lei on a sideline during a college football game. But famously, Coach Tomey embraced that culture fast and hard. He wore the Aloha shirts. He wore the leis. I've heard from Jesse Sapolu how he learned the culture and sat on the floor and just did things to connect with that culture. Talk to me about that connection and what he did all the way back in 1977 that you and your staff still pay homage to today.
Well, it's funny because like there were so many people that were so upset that I was wearing the leis, and to me, that was me being respectful to the mothers and the grandmothers of players that had given them to me. And I thought it was more important that I was respectful to them. And so, those things are, just choose what's going to be. If we had played better football, it wouldn't have mattered, we didn't play enough football. But, I think Coach Tomey was the first, American football coach to travel to American and Western Samoa and, go to Tonga. And, I think that part of it was Fiji, Australia. And so, and him having such a large chunk of his career and the way he is with people, was such a connection to kind of the Polynesian culture also, right? Just just that total family, that kind of real inclusive, that was who Coach Tomey was. And so that was something that I was, having been a part of his teams early on, and then having a chance to have a bunch of time, on the island, or had teammates or head coach players that were Polynesian, that part of it has been such an important piece of Arizona football. It was an important piece for us at San Jose State also. And so, that's one of those things that we're going to lean heavy into, because outside of the great players that those young men can be, they also bring an awesome culture component to your football team.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just want to thank you. I mean, it's awesome to me that you would continue to show respect in that way. And I saw the same thing in Coach Tomey, wearing an Aloha shirt. He might have taken some barbs and some criticism in the media, like, what is this guy doing? But it's a player's first mentality. It's showing respect, not only to your players, but to their family, to the people who have entrusted the most important people in their lives to you for the next however many years. And hats off to you and your staff for that. Are there any specific moments or stories or conversations with Coach Tomey that have stuck out with you over the years? Let's start with a funny one first. Any funny Coach Tomey stories that bubble up to your consciousness when I ask?
There's so many. I'm trying to think at which stop were the funniest. We had, it wasn't funny. It was, I alluded to it earlier, but when we were playing, I was coaching in my first year, and we were playing at Hawaii, and they had a pretty good football team. And we were just getting started at San Jose, so we had a lot of work to do. And we go over there, and we are in the game, late in the game, and we return a kickoff for a touchdown. And when we return the kickoff for a touchdown, it's going to now make it a 2-point game, and we're going to kick the PAT. And so, but as our guys are scoring, they celebrate, and they get into the end zone and do this big, crazy, celebration, and they get flags thrown everywhere. And so then that backs our, the penalty backs our field goal unit, the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. And so then that PAT gets blocked and returned for a touchdown.
Wow.
So now, instead of it being a game that we can win with a field goal, now we have to score a touchdown. And we were heavily penalized in the game. So, which, with Coach Tomey, it was kind of lack of discipline, and it was just really frustrating. So after the game, I was talking to the media, but he was walking down the field at Aloha Stadium, walking straight at me, and I could see him when he was upset with you. He kind of walked with a forward lean, and he was looking right at me. And I saw the media, and I was trying to get rid of the media. I was doing my press conference on the field, so I was like, okay, hey, thanks, good talking to you. And so then, as he came, I backed up, and I was in the tunnel. And so I said, Coach, I know what you're going to say. And he goes, don't apologize to me. You get in that locker room right now, and you apologize to to your players, because this is your fault, because you're either coaching it or allowing it to happen, which was one of his Tomeyisms, to the core.
You're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. Not just a catchy saying on a t-shirt, not just something he said when a microphone was pointed in his face. We've heard this exact quote time and time again. I've said it myself over the years. It is core to the Dick Tomey ethos. And in a moment of pointed mentoring after a tough loss, recognize that a now retired Dick Tomey reminded his young apprentice, now a head coach himself, that coaching doesn't just involve what you say. It also involves what you fail to say, what you choose not to say. And this, my friends, is a masterclass in leadership that I needed to hear. You're either specifically telling the people who have trusted their livelihoods, even their lives, or the lives of the people they love the most. You're either giving them exactly what you expect, or you are failing to address things you know in your heart to be less than you expected from them. Coach also famously told so many that he loved them so much that he was going to tell them the truth. And in that moment, as harsh as it may have been, and as uncomfortable as it probably was to be on the receiving end of, it mattered. It stuck. That unfortunate lack of discipline had cost San Jose State the game. In 2017, they'd go just 2-11 that season. But 3 seasons later, Brent would guide the Spartans to a 7-1 COVID-shortened record, going 6-0 in the Mountain West and earning a berth to the Arizona Bowl. We don't always have to enjoy hard coaching from our mentors, but sometimes it is exactly what we needed.
And so, cussed out by Coach Tomey in the tunnel, and then I had to go apologize to my team. But there was just so many moments like that with him. He was great with my family. He was close with my wife and kids. obviously Nancy was always a huge part of the program, and she still is. We still see her. She still comes to practice. She still comes to games. But yeah, there's so many funny stories. I'm trying to think of a good one from San Jose State. This is like an awesome Coach Tomey. So every morning he would go get Nancy coffee. So he'd go get her coffee at like Starbucks, whatever. And they lived in Santana Row. It's like this really nice area of San Jose. We were all coaching there. And so one day when he was going to get coffee, he just like ducked into this like really nice hotel. And with his like Coach Tomey charm, he brokered a deal for us to stay at that hotel. And they've been in San Jose State for recruits. And so San Jose State has been hosting recruits at that hotel since 2005. Like we still did it when I was there. And it's a wonderful, amazing place. And that was just like, he just went in there and worked his magic, and that deal is long lasted. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's 20 years.
Yeah. The stories of the things he did beyond the game that you really can't appreciate the volume of them, because you might have had one thing like that happen to you or your program, but then there's 20 or 30 or 100 other guys that all have similar stories. And I'm just consistently amazed, not just at how hard he loved his people, and everybody was his people, but the scope of how hard he loved his people was just kind of staggering. I've heard people talk about Tomey season when, the coaching carousel starts and he's on the phone trying to give people jobs. And that was just his way. I've always been impressed by that. Well, I know in talking to Brad, and not to get too personal, but losing your dad was a big loss. And Coach Tomey's loss, I think, impacted you and Brad in similar ways. If you had a chance, if by some miracle we could schedule time for Coach Tomey to walk through your office door in the morning and sit down and you could have a conversation with him, what would you say? And what would you ask him that maybe you never got a chance to?
I think I would just say that I've missed him on this journey that I've been on. He kind of passed away right at the beginning, of us getting the program turned around at San Jose State, and I think he would really enjoy, being a part of that, and I would have enjoyed pulling him into it and having him talk to the team, and that part of it, I think. And it would have been cool being back here because they ended up in Tucson. It would have been amazing to be able to have him be a part of what we're doing with our football team here now. I think that part of it would be just amazing. In terms of what I would ask him, I think now that I've been doing this a little bit longer, I would ask him more about like the biggest mistakes he made. Just as I think when everybody gets a head coaching job, there's no like manual for this. Like every place is different, every job. Like the football is the football, but the majority of the job is all the other stuff that surrounds it, right? It's campus, it's alumni, it's administration, it's like all these things. It's just such a different, every place is different. And so I would want to lean in a little bit more to some of those things.
Yeah.
With him, just like, hey, what did you learn at each stop? What did you wish, how do you wish you done, going into the second year at San Jose or the second year at Arizona when you first took over Hawaii. So, I would definitely really want to lean on his experience. But it is like losing him was impactful. He was kind of like my professional dad. I mean, that part of it was very, very real. He was the guy I called every Sunday. We talk about the games, and he was alive for this really tough stretch of my head coaching career, right? And so those conversations on Sunday were not always pleasant, but they were always honest, and they were always direct, and they were always heartfelt, and they were all, him giving me his best, trying to help me, which I always appreciated.
Absolutely. Well, I visited Tucson for the first time in a long time 2 years ago, and on campus, wow, baseball stadium's gone. That's a big deal. But then to see Coach Tomey practice fields, what's it like for you and your staff to put on the whistles and slide on the pullover or the T-shirt or whatever and go walk out on the Dick Tomey practice field?
I think it's so cool. I think it's cool because every day I get all these reminders of who he was in my life and who he was for this university and for the other places he was. I think I think it's rare when you think about somebody every day of your life on the job and it's someone that you worked with. And that's who Coach Tomey is for me.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Brent, thank you so much for your time. I'm so appreciative. I know you're so busy. Pulling for you. Arizona in the Big 12 still doesn't seem quite right to me. Like the Pac-12's demise still hurts, but definitely pulling for the Wildcats.
Brent Brennan, head coach at the University of Arizona, and I am undone.
What a powerful conversation. Brent Brennan's journey isn't just a series of coaching stops. It's a living testament to the kind of leader Coach Dick Tomey was and the kind of legacy he left behind. You heard it in Brent's voice, the gratitude, the conviction, the heartbreak, the resolve. Maybe you noticed it too. That quiet thread running through every story. It wasn't just about game plans and schemes. It was about people. Coach Dick Tomey didn't just coach football. He built men. He modeled what it meant to lead with integrity, to listen deeply, to love fiercely, and to never stop believing that who you are off the field is at least every bit as important as what you do on it. Brent carries that with him. Every team meeting, every whistle blown, every practice session on those fields that now bear Coach Tomey's name. That's the legacy at work. Alive, present, still shaping futures. It's easy to talk about someone's impact when they're gone. What's harder and far more powerful is to live it out in real time. Brent Brennan is doing just that. And in doing so, he's making sure Coach Tomey's story doesn't just get remembered. It gets continued. Speaking of continued, next time on Becoming UnDone, we'll sit down with former Arizona football athletic trainer Maggie LaCambra. I'm also trying to pin down the elusive and now retired Wendell Neal, who served as equipment manager for the team for years. We'll have this and more coming up on Becoming UnDone. If you're listening and want to be on the show or know someone who does, let me know about it. And hey, if you've made it this far, do me a favor. Text this episode to someone else who was touched by Coach Tomey. Let them know. Whether they knew him personally or just learned from someone who did, invite them to come along for the journey. We're nearing the end of the journey, by the way, but we aren't there yet. This is Becoming UnDone, the life, lessons, and legacy of Dick Tomey, a Toby Brooks passion project. Becoming UnDone is a Nitro Hype creative production written and produced by me, Toby Brooks. Follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Becoming UnDone Pod and at Toby J. Brooks. Check out my link tree at linktr.ee/Toby J. Brooks. Subscribe and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you're listening right now. Until next time, thanks for listening. Be purposeful, be relentless. Love someone enough to tell them the truth. And keep getting better.